let's go ahead and go to Module 9. So again, we're still kind of circling back to Test 1, which is good review for the final. So we talked about graphing lines on Test 1. Here it is again, graphing lines. So Module 9, Homework 1, asks us to is talking about the slope of a line. So here's what we're going to be doing. So if you want to read that, go for it. If not, let's just kind of scroll on down. So how do you describe a line? So if it's a straight line, it's going to have a constant steepness. It's going to have a constant steepness. Or a constant slope, because that steepness is our slope, or a constant rate of change. So if you notice, slope, steepness, rate of change all mean the same thing. So what is the slope? The slope is that steepness of the line or that rate of change to get from one point to the next how the graph is changing. So for slope, we have some formulas for slope that we talked about before, but let's talk about it again. You do need to know these formulas for the test. So our M, which is the letter that we use for slope to abbreviate it, is our slope, which is our average rate of change, which is rise over run. If we're rising, rise is going up and down, so that's our Y value. So subtracting our Y values, which is our change. If we're running, it's talking about left and right. So it's talking about our X values, so subtracting X2 minus X1, which is our change over time. So notice it's just going to be a number. So that number could be positive, which means whenever you read your graph from left to right, because you read English, you read math from left to right, whenever you read from left to right, it's going upward. That number could be negative, which means that line's going to be going downward from left to right. Your slope could be 0. That means we're going to have a horizontal line. Or it could be undefined, which is vertical. Now, here's what I see. Two things. A is if you understand it, or the more, if you understand how it works, it's better to remember it. And B, people try to memorize which one's which. Is horizontal 0 and vertical is undefined? And I see everyone on the test get confused. And a lot of times they put the right answer and then they erase it and second guess themselves and put the wrong answer. So don't memorize anything. Take 2 seconds to think about what's going on behind the scenes. We know our slope is going to be rise over run. So if this is our line, how much is this graph, this horizontal line, rising? How much is it going up and down? It's not, so 0. But it's going left and right forever. So 0 divided by infinity, or 0 divided by any number, is just what? 0. Likewise, for this vertical line, our slope is still rise over run. This graph is rising, it's going up and down forever, so infinity, but it's not running, it's not going left and right at all. So infinity, or any number divided by 0, in our calculator, any number divided by 0 will give us an error. An error means undefined. So if you get confused on the test, take 2 seconds to think about rise over run and say, okay, is it 0 or is it undefined? If you're not sure which one's which, plug into your calculator. 0 divided by 2 would give you 0. 2 divided by 0 would give you undefined. So plug it into your calculator. Now, this might be kind of weird, but this is kind of something that, like, I don't know, I've kind of picked up over the years that I've just noticed, and it kind of helps me. So if it helps you, great. If not, ignore what I'm going to say. So for slope of 0, that word horizontal has two O's in it. To me, the letter O's are like zeros. So that word horizontal has two O's in it, which tells me that my slope is 0, whereas the word vertical has no O's in it. So that means my slope is undefined. You see what I'm saying? I don't know. That's just something that, like, after studying this, like, I need little tricks like that to kind of help me. And that's the little trick that I use. So maybe it might help you. If not, don't worry about it. But I just thought I'd mention it. But that's how I think about it to this day. So questions on that part. So going back to test 1, we talked about slope-intercept form. So we're talking about slope, and then now talking about our intercept. So our y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. This is also going to be our starting point. We'll see in a second. Or are we seeing on test 1? We started off with our y-intercept. That was our starting point. And then from there, we found another point based off of our slope. So for our y-intercept, what did we say our x value was? If it crosses our y-axis, what's that x value? Yeah, I heard someone say it, 0. So for our x-intercept, we know, for our y-intercept, we know our x value is going to be 0. For our y-intercept, we know our x value is going to be 0. So whenever we write our y-intercept, you write it as the ordered pair 0, e. Whenever we write our y-intercept, we write it as the ordered pair 0, b. It's always x is 0. And just like for slope, we use the letter m. For our y-intercept, we use the letter b. So putting this together, we have our slope-intercept form of the line, which is y equals mx plus b. Again, make sure you know this for the test, where m is the slope and b is our y-intercept. So slope-intercept form of a line shows us our slope and our y-intercept, hence the name slope-intercept. So we're going to use this on the next page. Before we go there, questions, comments, concerns for me, please. Yes, ma'am.
The B.
Yeah.
So how did it become a B for,
So B is just in general. So like, you know how for slope, we just use the letter M to abbreviate it? Like, so instead of writing the word slope every time, we just use the letter M. So for y-intercept, we just use the letter B to put it, instead of writing plus y, the whole word y-intercept, we just use the letter B to abbreviate it. So that's just like in general. So B could be any number. Does that answer your question? So M and B are just the abbreviations for slope and y-intercept. Why they use M and B, I have no idea. So it kind of seems random. But yeah, but it's in general, exactly. That's just for the formula's sake. On the next page, we'll see an actual example of it. Thank you for asking. Any other questions before we go to the next page? All right, so dealing with the next page, it says, given the points 8, -2, and -1, -3, find the slope. All right, so we know slope from the previous page. We have 2 points. So I'm going to use the formula y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Just like I've said before, always write out the formula right next to it, especially for slope. I feel like people know how to do this, but it's so easy to like mess up something. So write the formula out so that we don't make a little mistake, because the little mistakes are what cost us a lot of points. So this first point, I can label it as x1, y1. I can label my second point as x2, y2. So let's plug into our formula. Y2 we said was -3. The formula says minus, so -3 minus y1, which is -2. So -3 minus -2 all over. X2, which is -1, minus x1, which is +8, just to kind of simplify it a little bit. What do you know about two negatives? Makes positive. So I can rewrite this as -3 plus 2 all over -1 minus 8. Don't let the little stuff like this mess you up. So if you need to plug it to your calculator, -3 plus 2, which will give us -1 all over -1 minus 8, which will give us -9. So -1 divided by -9. Always simplify your fraction, so what could cancel out? The negatives. So we're left over with our slope being 1/9. Notice it's just a number. There's no x, nothing like that. It's just 1/9. And that's it. Questions, comments, concerns on this one for me, please? Yep.
So the y is on top and the x is on the bottom.
Always. Yep. Both your y's are up top and both your x's are on the bottom. Notice I labeled them to x1, y1, x2, y2. So that way you're just plugging in to the formula. As long as you know the formula, you should be good to go. All right, so that was finding our slope given 2 points. Next, we're going to find the slope if we're given the line. Can I move my paper up? So now we're given, find the slope of the line. Now we're given a graph. So based off this graph, let's find 2 good points. So I see this point right here is 0, 0. That's a good one to use. Another point, let's use this one right here. So it's over 5, down -3. Remember our ordered pairs are x, y. So over 5 on our x-axis, down 3 on our y-axis. The reason why I picked 5, -3 is these other points are like not hitting on whole numbers. So I don't want to use a decimal. I went all the way to 5, -3 because that hit on whole numbers. You could have also used this one up here, -5, +3. That would have been fine too. Whatever 2 you want to use will give you the same answer. So another formula from our slope that we've seen on the previous page was rise over run. So let's use that one here. So our slope is going to be rise over run, rise over run. Just like we talked about earlier with slope, you always go from left to right. You read your graph from left to right. Everything goes from left to right. So go from left to right. So going from this left point to the right point. So going from 0, 0 to 5, -3. How much is this point rising? Well, I see it's going down 1, 2, 3. So it's going down 3. Rise is going up and down. This point is going down 3. And how much is it running? Running is going left and right. To get from this point to the next point, we're going to run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to go to the right 5. So to get from one point to the next, we went down 3 and then we went right 5. Down 3, right 5. So I know for my rise, it's going up and down. Up is positive, down is negative. So this will give me -3. Run is left and right. Left is in the negative direction. Right is in the positive direction. So I have -3 over +5, which cannot be simplified as my final answer. Now, that's like if you're a visual person. Some people aren't visual learners. So if you don't like that, you have the other option of using the point 0, 0 and 5, -3 and doing it just like we did up there. So this would be x1, y1. This would be x2, y2. Plugging it into your slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. It would give you the same answer up there. So if you want that other option, you have that as another option. Totally up to you. I just kind of want to throw that out there. If you don't like the counting idea, you could just plug it in to our y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, just like we did at this previous problem right here. Same exact thing. Instead of giving us 2 points, we would just use the graph to find 2 points. We have 2 more examples that are like this, but before I go to the next one, questions on this one? So for the next one, it says find the slope of the line. And our line is going to be this vertical line. So we kind of talked about this already. Some of you can just look at this and know the answer, but let's pretend that you didn't. So remember, slope is going to be rise over run. How much is this graph rising? How much is it going up and down? Infinity, forever. How much is it running? How much is it going left and right? 0. So infinity or any number divided by 0 would give us undefined. So our slope is undefined. Same thing for the next one on the next page. Before I go there, questions, comments, concerns, how can I help make this one easier for you? Yes, ma'am.
I would have put the answers just 2 as far as I see on the homework. It said.
So for maybe what you're thinking of too is this says find the slope. The equation of this line though would be y equals 2. So maybe that was if it said write the equation would be y equals 2. So make sure you read the directions. So good notice there. What else?
So if it says equation, then you put y
Equals 2. Right, but this one just said find the slope. Right, so slope is rise over run. Good. What else? All right, last one like this. Find the slope. This time we have a horizontal line. Again, we're finding the slope. So we know our slope is going to be rise over run. How much is this graph rising? How much is it going up and down? 0. How much is it running? How much is it going left and right? Infinity. 0 divided by infinity, 0 divided by any number. 0. Done. Remember, this is going to be a horizontal line. So we see those O's, and that tells us that our slope is going to be 0. So if this were on a test and you can just look at it and know that it's 0, that's fine. I was just showing work for our notes' sake. So that was all of this type. Our last 3 problems are going to be a little bit different. So before we go to these last 3 questions about this one. All right, so can I move my paper? It says consider the following two lines. Line 1 is x plus 4y equals 26. Line 2 is x plus 4y equals 4. Find the slope of line 1, find the slope of line 2, and then which of the following is true? Are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? So let's first talk about the slopes, and then we'll talk about parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So for line 1, we have x plus 4y equals 26. I don't know the slope by looking at this because this is not in slope-intercept form. So we need to put this into slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So then we can find our m, we can find our slope. Notice it's y equals mx plus b. So all we have to do is get y equals, get y by itself. What should I do first to get y by itself? Subtract x, thank you. So to get y by itself, we're going to subtract x from both sides. That way x minus x cancels out. We're left over with 4y equals negative x plus 26. Notice I put that negative x before the 26 because I want it to be in the form mx plus b. Divide by 4, thank you. So to get y by itself, it's 4 times y. So I can divide both sides by 4. Now notice I'm dividing the whole side by 4. So both terms are going to be divided by 4. So y equals negative x over 4 plus 26 over 4. Seriously? So I know negative x is the same thing as saying negative 1x. So I can rewrite this as y equals negative 1/4 x, just so that way it's mx plus b. 26 over 4. I always want to simplify. What does 26 and 4 have in common? 2. So I can divide out a 2 from the top and the bottom. So plus 13 over 2. Great, so we did it. So now it's in y equals mx plus b form. So we could see our slope, our m value is negative 1/4, and our b is 13 over 2. It just asks us to find the slope. So this slope, this m value is going to be negative 1/4. So our slope is negative 1/4 for line 1. So we're going to go through the same process for line 2. So I'll give you a minute before we start line 2. All right, line 2 says x plus 4y equals 4. Just like we did over here, I want to put it in the slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So just like we did over here, let's subtract x from both sides to get y by itself. Move that x to the other side, so that way x minus x cancels out. We're left over with 4y equals negative x plus 4. Again, I want it to be an mx plus b, so that's why I put that negative x first. It's 4 times y, so let's divide both sides by 4. Notice I'm dividing the whole side by 4, so both things get divided by 4. So we're left over with y equals negative x over 4 plus 4 over 4. which we can simplify down to, again, remember it's like negative 1x. So I can rewrite this as y equals negative 1 over 4x plus 4 over 4, which is just 1. So we did it. We put it into y equals mx plus b form. So we can see our m in front of our x value is negative 1/4. Our b is positive 1. So our slope for line 2, which is our m value, is negative 1/4. So we did it. We found the slopes of both lines. So now based off of the slope, we need to see, are they parallel, are they perpendicular, or if they're neither. If they're parallel, that means they're going in the same slant, the same steepness. That means the same slope forever and not touching. So parallel means they have the same slope. Perpendicular means they're crossing at 90 degrees. So this is like two parallel lines. They have the same steepness, the same slope. Perpendicular lines cross at 90 degrees. That means they have opposite reciprocal slopes. Opposite means one's positive, one's negative. Reciprocal means we're going to flip our fraction. Slopes. So this is like two perpendicular lines. They cross at 90 degrees. An example of opposite reciprocals would be like positive 2 over 3 and negative 3 over 2. One's positive, one's negative, and we literally flip the fractions. So positive 2 over 3 and negative 3 over 2. I want to try to finish these last two problems in the 7 minutes we have, so that's why I'm going to keep going. But I noticed that these two lines had the same slope. They're both negative 1/4. So because they're both negative 1/4, they have the same slope, so they're parallel. Done. That's it. We're going to do the same thing for the next two, and then we're done for today. So how can I help you with this one before we go to the next one? Ready for the next page? Oh shoot, we have 3 more. Okay, we can do it. So same thing for this one. Consider the following two lines. So line 3 is going to be x equals negative 3 over 2y plus 10. So this is not in slope-intercept form. We need to put it into y equals mx plus b form. So I need to get y by itself. So let's move that 10 to the other side so we can subtract 10 from both sides. That way those cancel. So x minus 10 equals negative 3 over 2y. It's negative 3 over 2 times y. So in order to get y by itself, we can divide both sides by negative 3 over 2. That way those cancel. We're left with x minus 10 over negative 3 over 2 equals y. I'm going to bring it over here so we have more room. And I'm going to flip it around. So y equals x minus 10 all over negative 3 over 2. Remember, fractions mean divide. So that's the same thing as saying y equals x minus 10 divided by negative 3 over 2. Going back to test 1, we're dividing fractions, so we can keep it, change it, flip it. So we're going to keep the first fraction the same. We're going to change our operation from multiplication to division, and we're going to flip that fraction. So y equals keeping x minus 10 the same, changing our operation from division to multiplication, and we're going to flip that fraction. So instead of negative 3/2, it's going to be negative 2/3. So let's distribute. So y equals x times negative 2/3, which will give us negative 2/3 x, negative 10, which is negative 10/1, times negative 2/3. Negative times a negative is a positive. We're multiplying fractions, so top times top, bottom times bottom. 10 times 2 is 20. All over 1 times 3 is 3. We did it. We put it into y equals mx plus b form. So we could see that this slope, this m value, is negative 2/3. So for line 3, our slope is negative 2/3. For line 4, thankfully it's already in slope-intercept form for us. So y equals negative 4/5x minus 1. It's already in y equals mx plus b form for us. So we can just look at it and know that our slope, which is our m value, is negative 4/5. So line 4, our slope is negative 4/5. So if I have negative 2/3 and negative 4/5 for our slopes, they're not the same. They're not opposite reciprocals, so they're going to be neither. Line 3 is neither parallel nor perpendicular to line 4. They're not parallel, they're not the same slopes, and they're not perpendicular, they're not opposite reciprocals. Two more. Questions, comments, concerns about this one? So I know we're going fast. If you need to take a picture, you can. I want to just try to make sure to finish, and I'll be respectful of your time. So consider the two lines. Line 5 is y equals x minus 1. Line 6 is y equals 4 minus x. So are we done? Problem. Can I move my paper down? Does anyone still need a second? All right. So line 5, thankfully, is already in slope-intercept form for us. So y equals x minus 1. Thankfully, it's already in y equals mx plus b form. So m in front of x is going to be positive 1. So our slope, which is our m value, is going to be positive 1 for line 5. For line 6, we have y equals 4 minus x. It's almost in slope-intercept form. I just want to switch it around because I want it to be mx plus b, so I want that x term to be first. So notice my x is negative, so negative x. My 4 is positive, so when I flip it around, it's negative x plus 4. So now it's in y equals mx plus b form. So I can see that my m in front of my x is going to be negative 1. So our slope, which is our m value, is going to be negative 1. Now they're not parallel, so because they're not the same, but they are going to be perpendicular because one's positive, one's negative. They're opposite. One's positive, one's negative. Reciprocal slopes. So if we have 1, that's the same thing as saying 1/1. And if we have negative 1, that's the same thing as saying negative 1/1. So if you flip 1/1, it's still just 1/1. So they're opposite reciprocals. That word reciprocal means that if you flip the fraction. So they are going to be perpendicular. There's one more quick one on the next page, and then we're done. This one was kind of tricky though, so questions on this one? So a few more seconds, we'll go to this last one and we'll knock it out real quick and then we'll be done. last example. Same thing, consider the two lines. Line 7 is 3y minus x equals 28. So let's start by finding the slope of line 7. 3y minus x equals 28. I want to put it into slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. So I want to get y by itself. So I'm going to move that x over. So I want to add x to both sides. So 3y equals x plus 28. I want that x term to be first, so mx plus b. It's 3 times y, so I can divide both sides by 3. So both terms are being divided by 3. So y equals x over 3 plus 28 divided by 3. It's the same thing as saying 1x. So y equals 1/3 x plus 28 over 3, which cannot be simplified. So we did it. We put it into y equals mx plus b form. So my m value in front of the x, my slope is going to be 1/3 for line 7. For line 8 is a little bit tricky. That's why I want to talk about this real quick. So x equals -8. If I were to graph this, this would be a what is it called? Vertical. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A vertical line at -8. What do you know about vertical lines? What's our slope? Undefined. So our slope is undefined. Another thing is we want to try to put it into y equals mx plus b. There is no y, so I can't put it into y equals mx plus b. Cannot put into y equals mx plus b. So that in itself is telling me that our slope is undefined. My other class was like, oh, it's 0. If it was 0, it would be, let me use another color, y equals -8. If it's y equals -8, I could put it as y equals 0x minus 8. So that would tell me my slope, y equals mx plus b, would be 0. This would be a horizontal line at -8. I just wanted to kind of show you that. So this slope would be undefined. So they're not the same, they're not opposite reciprocals, so our answer would be neither. It's a lot to put in one page, sorry, but that's everything.